And welcome back to the Popcorn Conspiracy on centralcoastradio.com. You've got Dave and Kyle at the moment, and we're going to talk about one of the really, really big films that's coming out right now. It's called Air. And of course, it stars who's who, really: Matt Damon, Jason Bateman, Ben Affleck. It's directed by Ben Affleck as well, and it actually centers around what was happening at Nike at the time of the arrival of Michael Jordan into the NBA. You've got Sonny, played by Matt Damon, whose job it is to go out and sign people to the Nike label. Now, of course, Nike is not the brand that we know it as today. So its CEO, Phil Knight, Ben Affleck, has been able to tap into the running market and the athletics market, but hasn't really been able to tap into basketball. Any of the basketballers that they've signed have kind of been mediocre players, and nobody out there really wants to wear Nike. The NBA is pretty much a Converse dominated world, whereas the kids in the world want to seen wearing Adidas. So therefore, Phil Knight's basically said to Sonny, "You've got to sign somebody this time around. You've got to sign three players. They've got to be players that are going to make Nike a brand that's going to want to make basketballers wear them." There's also pressure on Rob Strausser, played by Jason Bateman, who is the head of the basketball department, and he's losing faith in Sonny and Sonny's ability to be able to land a big name. Now, when they sit down to look at the players that are coming into the current NBA season, they're divided on who they're going to go after. But Sonny is convinced that Michael Jordan is the player to go after. The only problem is Michael Jordan has no interest in signing with Nike. In fact, he's already told his manager that he's managed David Falk, played by Chris Messina, that he doesn't want to even take a meeting with Nike. So this is a film that really explores that inner sanctuary about what happens with endorsements and things like that, and it tells the story of how Nike went after a player that they believed was going to be the next big thing. Now, I guess you and I kind of came into this film from very different backgrounds. I love NBA basketball and have loved it since I was a kid, but you're probably not as passionate about NBA basketball as me. So,
Yeah,
how did you feel going into this film?
yeah, that's the thing. Like, I was really interested in heading into it because of the names that were involved, and just because I respect Ben Affleck so much as a filmmaker. But yeah, yeah, as you stated, I had no idea about basketball, the NBA. I mean, I know who Michael Jordan is. I know about his deal with Nike, but yeah, I none of the names in this um stood out to me really, like any of the people at Nike or any of the high ups in the NBA that are characters throughout the film. None of them I knew about. So yeah, I kind of went into this with a completely open mind, and yeah, it was a really interesting film for something that I think it could have been um like it could have been really boring, like kind of like a story about how a billion-dollar corporation made even more money. But I think what makes the film really good is the underlying respect that it has for Michael Jordan and his legacy. Like that is it's not like I would say some people might look at this and think that it's really glorifying Nike, and like it's really lionizing that, but it doesn't. Like it doesn't outright slander Nike like it kind of does some of the other shoe companies. But um it they still like talk in this movie about how some Nike shoes are made like overseas, and they're not made in America. They're made like cheap labor and stuff like that. Like, and it still deals with kind of that dark kind of part side of business. But where when it comes to Michael Jordan, that's really kind of the like the heart of the film, is kind of knowing that this guy is going to be huge, and he's going to be this huge this powerhouse in the sporting world. And it's really interesting, like kind of seeing like the movie kind of makes a point of this is like, yeah, now that he's big, now that everyone knows that he's huge, now everyone claims that, oh yeah, we always knew he was going to be huge, you know. But this movie, it kind of looks at the people on the inside who kind of maybe when he was just another name on a blackboard,
Yeah.
with like 20 other people, but there was like there was something about him that just made him stand out, and it's kind of about the characters behind closed doors that you never would hear about otherwise, who kind of could see that and looked into that. um but yeah, how from your side, dude, like somebody who knows some as much about basketball as you do, how did you find the movie?
Yeah, I found it really interesting because a lot of people who are really into basketball kind of know that when Michael Jordan was coming into the NBA, there wasn't big raps on him. There were players like Hakeem Olajuwon, Charles Barkley, John Stockton, and they were the players that everybody was talking about at the time, even Patrick Ewing. Um, so there was, it's always been kind of surprising because everyone that I know that I talk to about basketball, when I tell them that Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team and that he wasn't the number one draft pick in the year that he went into the NBA, a lot of people kind of look at you like, really? Like he wasn't? And it's like, no, he wasn't. Like as you see in this film, when they're sitting down talking in the room about who Nike's going to target, his name doesn't even come up
Yeah.
in the initial talk. There's a whole bunch of players that's name are mentioned that never went on to anything in the NBA, and they were the ones that everybody was targeting. Like, of course, yeah, Charles Barkley, John Stockton, people were after them as well, and yeah,
Yeah.
Olajuwon and Ewing, and they all went on to big things, but they never went on to be anywhere as big as Jordan. But I think from a basketball point of view, when you're watching this film, you do get some things out of it that other people aren't going to get. Like they show an old Larry Bird um, uh, television commercial for Converse, and as one of the
Yeah.
people at Nike says, Converse is such a boring shoe. Well, Larry Bird was a sensational basketballer. In fact, some people would say he's probably equal to Michael Jordan. But let's be honest, the guy was as dull as ditch water. Like you were never gonna sell shoes off the back of him. He was this tall, lanky, white guy that he almost looked like he had no right being on a basketball court. Like, um, you think of movies like White Men Can't Jump, like the Woody Harrelson character is basically Larry Bird. That's how he was
Yeah.
viewed, and so you do get things like that out of it, and you do get a few laughs if you're a basketball fan too when they're talking about people like Elijah and Ewing and stuff
Mm.
like and people like that because you do know that they went on to successful careers. Um, but yeah, like there was parts of this I didn't know either. Like I think the whole Sunny story, the Matt Damon story in this is not
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
that is common knowledge. Um, to be honest, I probably would have thought that Nike and Jordan's relationship was just meant to be kind of thing. I didn't know that there was a period where Jordan didn't even want to talk to Nike. I certainly didn't know how the relationship started. I just would have figured with how synonymous Nike and Jordan are together that it wouldn't have started off as rocky as it did in this film. So I think that was the big part that I took away from this movie. Sure, there was a lot of the basketball stuff that I already knew, but I think I really took away about how that relationship started between the two in the first place.
Yeah, and being that it's such a period piece, like set in the 80s, I there's a lot of work gone into it to kind of recreate that era.
Yeah,
One in the production, costume, and set design, like they really went all out with that 80s aesthetic, and not in an overly ridiculous way like you'd see in like Anchorman or something like that, you know, like the characters look like they belong in the 80s. They've got the haircuts, they've got the suits, but like, I mean, when we first see Matt Damon,
and Ben
it
Affleck has a suit.
yeah, yeah, he has like a sweatsuit thing. Like, yeah, like and the opening of the movie, it actually took me a moment to realize, oh wait, yeah, that's Matt Damon. Because
Yeah,
like the way that it blends from like this montage of clips from 1984 and into the actual footage in the movie, it's like it took me a moment to realize that that was him. Like they'd done just such a good job of recreating that feel. But another thing is, of course, and we were talking about this afterwards, the soundtrack is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there is
Like,
so many great tracks came out in 1984, and
mm,
it feels like Ben Affleck has gone out and got the rights to all of them. So,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. The actors in this are great as well. Like, of course, like Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, but I think that the two that I really liked in it was Chris Tucker, him for one, because like I think he's a very like he's a truly underrated actor. Like I know a lot of people they just see him as like this comedic relief kind of guy, but he's like, I mean, he is, but he's so likable in this film, and he's playing such a much more mature character than you're used to seeing him play.
yep,
And like I thought he was great, and Viola Davis as well. Much of the real drama in the movie, I think, comes from a lot of her like back and forward with Matt Damon's character, where she's the one calling the shots. He's not talking to Michael Jordan. He's not talking to Michael Jordan's dad. He's talking to his mother because she's the one that wears the pants in that family. And like that was really really interesting. And you said it well yourself too that it's very much it's like a theater play almost
yeah, it
with
is.
the
Yep.
person to person drama. Yeah.
It's so dialogue driven. A lot of those scenes where you would expect a director like a director who wasn't as experienced as Ben Affleck
Mm.
to be like, oh, we need to put a little bit of action in there, like kind
Yeah.
of thing, like oh, we should have a scene where like he's chasing down Jordan or something. But Ben Affleck is a smart enough director, and his screenwriter is smart enough to know that that's not what happened, and that's not the way they're going to tell the story. So there's some
Mm.
really great dialogue driven scenes in this film, especially between, as you said, Viola Davis and Matt Damon, but also Matt Damon and Jason Bateman have got
Mm.
some pretty good scenes in here as well. Jason Bateman, I find to be one of the most interesting actors of our generation because he can go out and do a comedy like Horrible Bosses or something
Mm.
like that, or as we've seen in the last few years, he can go and do a really gritty crime thriller television series where you never really know, like his character's not black and white. There's gray there where he can go to
Yeah.
the dark side in a moment. And in this film, he doesn't get a lot of laughs. He's not in this for comedic value. He's a pretty dour kind of guy, but there's a brilliant sequence in here where him and Matt Damon stay back to work overnight to start to get this pitch together for Jordan. And there's a really touching scene where um, Jason Bateman's character talks about the fact that what Nike means to him, and that he's been through this divorce, and the only thing he thinks that his daughter likes about him now is that every time they catch up, he brings her new Nike shoes. And
Yeah.
he can't afford to lose his job there, because if he loses his job, he's feeling like he's going to lose his daughter because he's not going to have those shoes for her anymore. And it's moments like that where, like you said, you could go into this film thinking that it's just going to be a walking commercial for Nike for like 2 hours, but
Yeah.
it's touching moments like that when you realize that even as a big brand that we see these days, there's people that work in that company that it's their life. Um, Even with the Phil Knight character in this, the creator of Nike,
Mm.
they show scenes in this where, again, you could excuse them if they went for the Wolf of Wall Street kind of big corporate boss that's mean to everybody. And he is tough in this film. He's quite often tough on Sonny and points out to him, no, I can't do this or I can't do that. But it also shows to me a man who'd almost lost control of his company. It was his company. It started it out of the boot of his car, and now all of a sudden he finds himself having to answer to a board. And
Yeah,
there's
it
a
went
really,
public, so yeah.
yeah, there's a really powerful part in this movie when Sonny says to him, well, mate, you need to give me more money. Like, the only way this is going to happen is if you give me more money. And
Mm.
Phil kind of like stands there and gives him this look like, well, I want to, mate, but on my hands are tied, and it makes you realize that he was kind of losing control of his business as well. So there's a
Yeah.
huge part of this film that's nothing about Michael Jordan, like the Michael Jordan Nike relationship. That is a huge part of this film, but there's also another huge part of this film that's about a group of guys that just want to do their job and want to be successful at it, and they're overcoming all these obstacles. And I think that's what I took away from this film, was that it was so beautifully written, with its soundtrack, but it gave these great dynamic actors the chance to really strut their stuff and show what great actors they are.
Definitely, definitely. Like, I mean, back to what I was saying, like that Ben Affleck. I already thought that he was a great director after like Gone Baby Gone and Town and Argo, but like those being really like intense thrillers, it's great to see that he can also do something like this. That's not a thriller. It's not an action movie or anything like that, and it's a real person to person drama, as you say, with those really like deep moments of just like with Jason Bateman's character just saying like like if Matt Damon's character thing doesn't work out here, he's basically sunk us.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just he like that Affleck's able to direct a movie like that with this kind of drama in it, and for it to be like a potentially dull topic, but yet he's still able to maintain our interest and our fascination through the whole way through it. So yeah, I was really impressed by it.
Yeah, and it really shows things like what relationships are like in big business as well. Like there's a really
Mm.
interesting relationship between Sonny, Matt Damon's character, and David Falk, Chris Messina's character. Like there's a brilliant phone conversation where David Falk is like basically saying how much he hates Sonny and he thinks that he's
Yeah,
lazy at his job and everything. And then Sonny ends the conversation by saying, and what happens if we sign Michael Jordan? And David Falk says, well, then you and I are going to be best friends.
yeah.
And it's really like that Wolf of Wall Street kind of thing
That's it.
where
Yeah,
it's like, yeah, we hate each other because we're on opposite sides. For David Falk, he's trying to do the best he can for Michael Jordan, and Sonny, to him, Sonny's just getting in the way of that happening.
yeah.
But if they end up working together, they're going to have to work together. And I really love that phone conversation. Like they're David Falk's basically saying how he's going to destroy Sonny and everything, and then all of a sudden there's just that one moment where it's like, but what happens if we do succeed? Well, we'll be friends.
Yeah, we'll be
I
the
love
best
that.
friends.
Yeah, but that was where I think the film also had that kind of theater feel. Like that really felt like a moment where you'd be watching it in the theater, where it was completely dialogue driven, and it was also a pretty brave decision by Ben Affleck as well, because that scene went for about 5 6 minutes and it was basically just two guys on a phone with each other.
Yeah, yeah. Like there's quite a lot of that like throughout this as well. Like again, back to I guess the scenes between uh Viola Davis and Matt Damon. Like one of the most intense moments in the film is just between them both on the phone,
Yeah,
and it's like basically it all comes down to this, you know. And yeah, it for it to be really able to keep your interest through that, I think it really is a very well put together movie. And the writer of this was the only thing that they've been credited for,
yeah, yeah.
I believe. So yeah, that's I'm really interested to see what they go on to do next.
Definitely. Now,
Yeah.
like I said, this is a very, very powerful film, and I think a lot of people out there are going to want to go and check out this movie that might not have any interest in basketball or anything like this. But if you want to see some powerful performances from some of the best actors of our generation and an amazing story that comes together so well, but also a director at the top of his game, I think Ben Affleck does a wonderful job. Go out and check out Air. It is a general release film, so you'll be able to see it in most cinemas. But, mate, to wrap it up, what are you going to give this one out of five?
I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5. That's I was really impressed by it. I really did enjoy it. 4 out of 5 for me.
And I'm going to go that little bit higher. I'm actually going to give this 5 out of 5. I absolutely love this. I think it's my favorite film of the year so far. Just absolutely blew me away with the screenplay and the performances of the lead. So I'm giving it 5 stars. Go out and see it this weekend because I think you are going to love this film. You're listening to the Popcorn Conspiracy on centralcoastradio.com.